Greetings from the mystical world of Paranormal M, where the supernatural is an everyday occurrence. Join us on a journey through the unexplainable and the ghostly as we unravel the secrets of the unknown. Subscribe, turn on notifications, drop an M down in the comments to help us with the algorithm, and experience the paranormal like never before. I had a freaky paranormal experience this weekend, and I think it's followed me home. So this past weekend, my fiance Joey, 39-year-old male, and I, a 40-year-old female, tomorrow, we were at the Echo Lodge. It's a motel brand name, but it changed. I was celebrating my birthday early, since we both finally had the weekend off and we desperately needed to spend some quality time with one another. Friday late afternoon, we were in our room, number 263. This is important because there are only 2 floors, and we're at the end of the hallway. So not many guests on our end, which was nice because it was quiet, for the most part. Joey and I were watching TV when we heard what sounded like very heavy footsteps above us, followed by the sound of a small cast-iron cannonball being dropped. This was directly above where our heads were. That in itself was terrifying because, seriously, what the fuck? Later on, Joey and I are sitting on the bed, my back facing him, when all of a sudden Joey goes, "Whoa, what the fuck?" I look up at him and ask what happened. He told me that he had just seen a massive white orb float from the bed to the ceiling right between us. I was like, what? Then I realized that for the last 15 minutes it had been very cold between us, temperature-wise. Saturday night again, Joey and I are sitting on the bed just cuddling and watching TV, when out of nowhere I hear a woman's voice in my ear loudly whisper, "Hey!" I jumped and screamed and asked, "Joey, did you hear that?" He said he hadn't heard anything. Half hour goes by and all of a sudden I feel very cold, and a hand touches my upper thigh. I screamed louder than I had before and jumped off the bed. Joey was panicking, asking me what happened. I told him that somebody just touched me. I was for sure freaked out now. We had to go outside for a full half hour just for me to calm down. Well, we left the motel at 10 in the morning. Ever since Saturday night, I haven't stopped hearing whispering. My name being whispered, or "hey" being whispered in my ear. I'm thoroughly freaked out. I'm in North Carolina, if that helps. I need any kind of help in finding a reliable ghost hunters group. The peaceful cemetery in Ajo, Peloponnesus, Greece. During the summer, I lost my grandaunt Helena, and she was my maternal grandmother's sister. My grandma came from Ajo. It's a region in the Peloponnesus in Greece. So we visited the family tombstone and paid our respects to the last departing grandparent. And God, that cemetery was so beautiful and well taken care of. And it had that peacefulness all around. The cemetery was public owned, which surprised me, because in Greece, cemeteries aren't that well taken care of, or at least those I've visited. It was a shock. It was so big it stretched over a small hill, and it was at least 3 miles long if you walked around it. The earliest grave is from 1816, which shocked me. I felt so calm, like when I entered libraries. It was super hot the entire day, and in the cemetery. There was this perfectly cool breeze, though. And yet I felt so warm and perfect. I felt at peace. When I visited my paternal grandmother's grave, I feel this unrest and coldness in the place. That cemetery was cold and angry. The cemetery my maternal grandma and grandpa are buried. The one I visited as a kid has this restless calm. But the cemetery in Ajo was completely different. I'm in disbelief at what I experienced. I felt like I was being hugged by all my ancestors, and that I was welcome there. I felt the warm glow. Did I mention that? I didn't want to leave, but as I looked at the family grave, I said a soft hi and a nice to meet you in a low voice so my parents won't think I'm crazy. The moment I said hi and nice to meet you, I felt this warm hand on my shoulders. I felt like crying, blinking tears away while typing this, and I did blink tears away then too. I've never met my grandfathers. I never met any granduncles or grandaunts old enough to be able to have a conversation with. I was 5 or 6 old, like something like that, last time I saw any of them. I was 10 when the last granduncle died. I wasn't able to go to the funeral. My paternal grandmother died before I could say goodbye. So did my maternal grandma. My grandfathers died before I could meet them. It used to make me sad and wonder why how things would be like that. I had years of seeing dreams of them, and being with them in my great-grandpa's shop or my aunt's house or an old Athenian coffee shop from the 1950s. I felt lighter and happier. I didn't really want to leave, though. It's like I've made peace with how things are, and I knew they knew that I existed, and that I'd love them even though I never met them. Things were complicated with other family members. They didn't hate me because I was related to them or was the offspring of them. Odd flickering. This event happened around November 2022. It was 8 p.m. I was by myself at the entrance of the school. My dad and I go pretty much to evening and night school, and I'm studying computer science. My dad studies mechanical engineering. At that time, I had the 3 first periods free because my teacher was sick. I was hanging out at my dad's class when I saw that the break was coming up after it. I had class, and because of the distance, I decided to cross the campus, so I won't be late, you know? The break was like 10 minutes, and it took 8 minutes to cross the campus at a normal pace. But due to my osteoarthritis, sometimes my legs are heavy and my walking is slow. That day was a day that my legs were heavy and my osteoarthritis was flaring up and my pace was very slow. So at 8 p.m. I was waiting for the bell to ring, signaling the first break. And I was sipping my hot chocolate from my thermos after having gone to school cafeteria to get some ice cubes to put in it. It's too hot. I was about to start scrolling through my phone since I was by myself, and I felt very on edge. I was coming down from a week-long anxiety attack. I'm thinking it was because of that I felt on edge. To my left, there's this entrance door that leads to the second school on campus, my old high school. And that's where I was about a few minutes ago, since my dad's class is located in the basement of that building. Outside that building, there's a lamppost, and I turned to see it. A second after my eyes set on it, I noticed it was flickering. I thought nothing of it, thinking that it must be bugs flying around it or because of what's happening with the energy crisis in our town. It's lowering the voltages, causing that flickering, as they did during COVID-19 lockdowns. Hence why I don't think it's paranormal. But what makes me post this here is how the flickering and the black that appeared in between, it started becoming bigger and bigger every time. 3 times flickered, and the 3rd time the black spot was very big. Then there was an oomph sound everywhere and nowhere at the same time, before almost the entire campus was dived into darkness. Everything was dark except the classes. I could see the lights from the space under the door. The darkness lasted for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I jumped up and walked as fast as my legs would allow the cafeteria. They wrote that wrong. I'm going to fix it. I jumped up and walked as fast as my legs would take me. I was allowed to the cafeteria to ask the lady behind the counter, and the cleaner that was with her chatted if they were okay. To get them from where I was, it would take me a minute tops. But when I entered the cafeteria, the lights came back on. And when I asked, They said there was no power outage. Confused, I walked back to the bench. Everything was normal. The bell went off, and a break ensued. But in the minutes of darkness, it was completely silent, and I felt dread and on edge, even a bit of fear. I'm used to power outages from living on an island growing up. I've many times run out of power throughout the winter, so I always carry a flashlight with me, and I make sure my phones always have flashlights too. Amsterdam and Athens. I'm going to a night and evening school in a small town in central Macedonia. One of my classmates, Zoe, has 2 kids, a son and a daughter. The son lives in Shanghai, and the daughter lives in Amsterdam. This Christmas, Zoe orchestrated a surprise visit with her son to Amsterdam to go see her daughter. After the surprise, they decided to do tourist stuff, and they went on an Anne Frank tour. Sorry if that's not the right way to say it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Seems fine to me. When Zoe noticed a familiar person, me, or at least someone who looked like me, I'm talking identically looking like me. She wore the same outfit I would wear on the first day back to class after holidays anyway. White fleece shirt, white fleece leggings, black trainers, my black cardigan and gray puffy long jacket along with my purple beanie, my pink Oxford-themed scarf and emerald green gloves. The identical me wore the exact outfit as described and had the same hair color as me, dark brown. And even she had the same body type and walk. Zoe spent most of the tour being perplexed and hurt that I didn't come and say hi. So by the end of the tour, she walked up to the identical me and got her attention. But the identical me turned, and Zoe, instead of meeting my glass-wearing hazel green-brown eyes, Zoe was looking into emerald green eyes and no glasses. Confused, Zoe asked her. She asked her name. She said that her name was Helena Nasto, instead of my name, and she was from Aggio in Peloponnesus. To make things weirder, the last name Nasto is a family name for my dad's side of the family. Aggio is where my maternal grandmother and her family are from, and Helena is a family name and a name that my parents considered naming me. Zoe then shared this event on the first day of class after we exchanged gifts. And we shared wrapped desserts for my name day, which is on New Year's. I found it very odd because it reminded me of a different story my mom told me about Uncle Nikos, family friend who we refer to as Uncle, experienced in early December. The event goes as such. Uncle Nikos lives in Athens, and one day he was on a public bus when he saw me on the bus. He found it hilarious because he was on the phone with my mom. He hung up because he was about to get down and decided to pass by and surprise me. She wore the same gray puffy jacket and she had red hair like I had the last time Uncle Nico saw me. He walked up to her and tapped her on the shoulder, called her by my name when the other me looked him up and down confused. And Uncle Nikos saw emerald green eyes. And Uncle Nikos realized that he made a mistake. He called my mom asking where I was. My mom eyed me across the table as I was eating breakfast and said I was here with her. He got so confused and told us the story. My money's out on the doppelganger. Well, my dad thinks it's a parallel universe version of me, while my sister thinks it's a cousin of ours, but spent the holidays looking for her social media but couldn't find her. Dad asked around the family, but there is a Helen and a Stowe, but we don't look like at all, and she's blonde with blue eyes. It's the first 2 times that people said they saw me somewhere that I haven't been, and even someone looking identical to me. It's not my mom. I think I died twice when I was a child. Yesterday I was on a school trip to Kozani, Greece, and we were 4 in a car. V, me, Z, and E. Okay, when people do letters, I like to put names there because it drives me nuts, so we're going to go with Zoe for the Z, because she already said that in the last story, Vicky for the V, because it's too easy, and Evelyn for the E. Continuing onward. When the topic of the conversation went to car crashes, seatbelts, and speed, since my classmates are a bit older than me and remember when seatbelts weren't compulsory when these memories came to the front of my mind, while always being in the back, but always knew that they didn't make sense. The first memory is one I had always thought that was a dream, because I have it in two different versions in my head. The memory goes as such. I'm little age 4 or 5, and I'm in my parents' car, sitting between my paternal grandma and my paternal aunt. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt because at that time we didn't know the car had a third seatbelt buried in the seats. We figured it out later, though. We were driving pretty normally until a police car got in front of us and drove at high speed. We kept our distance till the police car abruptly stopped and we smashed into it. That's where the memory splits in half. In one memory, I'm about to fly into the windshield, but my grandma holds me back and I only hit my ear on the pillow of the front seat. The other memory that I really thought I dreamt of was me going through the windshield, laying on top of the car. Then, from an out-of-body perspective, I saw myself, who had her eyes open, staring up and blood coming out of her ears. I saw the police officers and we crashed into. They came out and they rushed to see what they did. And my mom and dad on the side of the road sobbing. I remember thinking that I didn't like hearing my mom cry and wanted to go back. So I floated toward my body, and the next thing I knew, I was blinking because somebody was shaking me. I realized that I'm in my bed, and Dad's waking me up for the trip. I threw a tantrum, refusing to go into the car, and I demanded that my booster seat be in the car instead, not taking it with us. Mom and Dad try to place my booster seat in the middle of the back seat, and that's how they figure out the third seatbelt. Seeing the third seatbelt and my booster seat installed, I calmly climb into the car, wipe my tears, and start playing with my stuffed monkey. Throughout the trip, I didn't let go of my grandma's hand or my stuffed monkey, and I stared through the windshield so intensely that Dad found out and asked me why I was being so weird. I told him I had a bad dream of me dying because of the police car. Dad was about to say that there was no police car when the police car appeared. I begged Dad to take a different exit. My begging and crying woke Mom up and asked what happened. I was clued in. Dad, sighing and shaking his head, tells me that the second exit will make our trip longer, so I better hold my pee. Unfortunately, we met the police car at the second stoplight after taking exit 2, and we crashed. I hit my ear in the pillow. My grandma had a semi-firm hold of me, and the belt did its job to a good extent. But I didn't die this time. Now, whenever I recall this event with my family, they all say I didn't hurt my ear much, and they just kind of bumped it, and that Grandma held me in place. The third seatbelt was discovered by us and the police on the scene as they were stopped and gave her statements. Dad said that I was on the side of the road staring at the windshield with an angry look and even went up to it and smacked it with my palm, calling it a bad windshield. To this day, I have an intense fear of not wearing my seatbelt. I don't take my seatbelt off if the car engine isn't off, too. Dad says I always kind of was like this, especially after the crash. He found it funny, and one more odd thing about me, by the way. The other odd thing was my table manners, which were like an adult's while not being taught table etiquette up to that age. Even the restaurant staff had found it funny. And odd, I've been told. My age during that time was 3, a year or 2 before the car crash. The second time I think I died was when I got run over by a car when I was 7 years old. I was in my current hometown, and it was just my maternal grandma's town. We were visiting in the summer and running some errands. I started having a fight with my mom about me not wanting to go to another shoe store. I was tired of tying and untying my shoes. I feel you. Mom crossed the road and refused to act in a sort of a rebellious move. That's when I bumped into someone coming out of the bank. They were on the same pavement as me. That someone was my dad. He asked what was going on, and Mom yelled across the street the whole story. People passing by looked at us weirdly when a man on a motorcycle in the process of climbing down told me I was being ungrateful and that kids in Africa would love to have more shoes. Dad agreed with the stranger and told me to cross the street and stop being difficult. I'm old now, not a child. Annoyed, I set out to cross the street. But I don't look both ways. Next thing I know, I'm staring at the driver of a Jeep, and my hands and feet are at odd angles, and they hurt, and so is my neck. The look of pure horror is the last thing I recall before my vision faded into black. The next thing I knew, I was standing by my mom's side. She was telling me that we needed to go to another shoe store, and I recognized the bank. I kept my mouth shut, but my whole body's tingling and I'm shivering. We meet up with Dad, who comes out of the bank, and he grabs me to hug me and says I'm cold, and then starts rubbing my shoulders to start warming me up. For the rest of the errands, I'm forced to stay by the sun to keep me warm. To this day, I'm 24 years old. Whenever I'm on that street, I stand across the bank and I feel shivers. I almost had a panic attack when I had to enter said bank last year to settle some things with my debit card. Both death memories snuck up on me while we were driving. We were talking about car crashes. I added to the conversation that I'd been 4 car crashes, and then we changed the subject, but the realization stayed with me throughout the trip. Did I quantum jump universes those times? My theory is yes, and it's not the first time. My blue shirt. I was packing my things to head to the college city for my residency, and due to the overwhelming hot weather that came out of nowhere, I had to unpack my summer clothes to take with me. I chose my best shirts, and as I was refolding them, I would try to think about outfit options, trying to measure for how many days these outfits will last me. That's when my mind drifted off topic, as it usually does. When my mind went back to the current topics, the war in Ukraine, climate change, my country's economy, and my future, I wondered what's become of us as humanity. When I started mechanically folding my shirts, I picked up my blue shirt. My blue shirt has letter prints on that I usually wasn't able to make out or tried too hard to read because I bought it from a Chinese thrift store. I knew it wouldn't make much sense since many times the shirts have grammatical errors or sentences or gibberish. I pick up my shirt to take a better look at it, and to see if the sleeve length is good for the weather. That's when I saw the shirt's letters print, and weirdly I could make it out. It wrote, "What we think we became." And I froze, found it very odd, like it was a sign or something. Weather and distances. I have 3 weird experiences, probably glitches to share, and I don't want to spam the sub, so I'm compiling them here. 2 are weather-related glitches, and 1 is a distance glitch. Weather glitch 1. This story's been told to me time and time again. It's something my maternal grandpa lived through, and my mom was able to partly witness. So my grandpa and the rest of his family were visiting Greece for the summer, since at that time they were living in Sweden, so it was around the late 1970s, maybe early 1980s. I was never told the exact date, but anyway, my grandpa was driving while the rest of the family, aka my grandma, my Aunt Helen, and my mom were asleep. It was on a 2-lane road, and the second lane kind of led in the opposite direction. He noticed that it was raining only in half the road, and the car was sprinkled by that rain only on his side, the driver's side. He let an audible sound of surprise, waking my mom, and she saw the roads wet from her side of the window. Confused, she asked my grandpa what's happening. My grandpa just said it was raining. Mom says that Grandpa never stopped talking about this until he died, 2 months after I was born. Weather Glitch 2. Ever since my mom, grandma, her mom, and my entire family have lived in my grandma's house, now our house. Oftentimes when it's raining in our town, most times it's only raining in the front of the house, and if somebody's in the sunroom or the kitchen or the master bedroom or big bathroom, they might have a completely different weather, from sunshine or just plain cloudy without rain. And when it would stop raining in the front, and only then will it be raining in the back of the house. It's been happening for years, so we perceive it as normal, but my sister's best friends were over for a few weeks and it was raining and noticed the event and said it was weird. And that made me question why this happens so often. It's rare that it's raining on both sides of our house. Distance glitch. I moved to my college city in late 2017, and I live at my aunt's house. During the times I'm there, I'm in charge of the house, and I have to clean it, cook for myself, and all that. It used to take 10 to 15 minutes to get to the most frequently used bus stops, around 20 minutes to get to the nearest supermarket, and 20 minutes to return, meaning you spend 40 minutes coming and going without adding the time you spend inside. In 2018 and 2019, I had timed myself as I had to go to the supermarket, and I have a shower and I'd be ready in 1.5 hours, but I needed to go grocery shopping. It took me 30 minutes in total to come and go and even shop because I knew the aisles were and the items I needed. And I was walking pretty fast, wasn't tired at all. Pandemic comes, and the world opens up again. That sounds backwards. I find another residency, so I live at my aunt's house again because it's easier. And here's where things get wonky. The distances are bigger. How the hell is this possible? Also, there are more shops around and it's more centery, this part of the area. Yes, they finished the entrance and the exit of the metro. The iron covers were lifted and the pavement was freed, so you didn't have to risk walking on the street, but that doesn't make sense. How now it takes me 30 to 40 minutes to get to the supermarket because it feels like an entire block was added that I have to cross by. Furthermore, opposite the supermarket, there weren't any stores. Now there's a pharmacy, and it says that it's been there since the 1980s and it looks old. Plus, the supermarket seems to have grown by at least 3 or 4 aisles. You used to walk from the pasta aisle to the tea and baby formula aisle, and then the liquor and the nut aisle, which led you to the chip aisle and the juice aisle. Now you walk past the aisle, which takes you to the second dessert aisle, then the baby formula aisle, to the liquor and the nut aisle, and suddenly you see a third dessert aisle, and then you have soda and water alongside the juice aisle. The water and soda aisle was always mixed by the juice aisle. Meaning that the supermarket has grown 3 or 4 aisles, yet is the same length on the outside. Just my 6 cents on the matter, maybe they're closer together. What Doctor Who mindfuck is this? Why suddenly does it take me 10 minutes longer? Otherwise known as I need an hour to come and go to the supermarket and 15 minutes to my most used bus stops. My walking pace has changed and, well, I'm sure they meant it hadn't. And also, I get tired all the time whenever I do the route. It feels like every time I did the most exhausting exercise ever. At first, I thought that it was because I wasn't used to it, and I've maybe added a few kilos due to the pandemic and health, but I've always been doing this route for 2 going on 3 months now, and I've toned and lost a few pounds because of this, and yet I still feel as if I'm fighting some sort of invisible force. Suddenly, my aunt's house is further uphill than it used to be. What's happening? And to add more to this, in 2017, for the first time I had to go to the supermarket, and I'd seen one while returning home on the bus. I mentally noted the bus stop, and I waited for the bus at my regular bus stop. The bus comes, and I'm in the supermarket. And that supermarket isn't the one I mentioned above, by the way. It's a different building in a different area, but the same supermarket chain. I finish my shopping, I go home. Yet throughout the entire time, I'm feeling dizzy and disoriented and had to open a bottle of lemon juice and pay for it later because I had just started seeing black spots in my vision. One worker said I looked pale and helped me sit down on top of a stepping stool, but no idea why I was dizzy to this day. I just felt wrong. The following week, I need another grocery run. So I climbed the bus again and wait patiently for the bus stop, and I went over the previous week. That bus never came. We didn't even cross that neighborhood. I asked the driver, and he said that bus 33 doesn't cross that route. The previous week, I'd used bus 33 because it's the only bus going through the bus stop I used. The only supermarket the bus stops at is the same one that I mentioned earlier, and it's about 20 minutes away then and 30 minutes away now. In 2019, the bus 33 changed its route, returning to home base, quote unquote, and it started going through the neighborhood and area of the supermarket I used the first time I went shopping in 2017. Realizing this, I'd gotten so dizzy I almost fainted thanks to the mist being behind me. She caught me, made me sit down. The route hasn't changed again since, and every time we cross that supermarket, I'm reminded of that time. Filled yet empty pepper shaker. This happened 2 days ago, and I've been thinking about posting it on the Glitch subreddit. Still, I don't know if it fits. I've had posts being off topic and deleted, and I don't want to be blocked because I have so many posts deleted or something like that. So I'm posting it here in hopes it's the right subreddit. On to the event. It was around 5 p.m. and I had just finished a Zoom interview for a job. Didn't get it, spoiler. Anyways, I was preparing my plate for late lunch. We had pasta with minced meat and tomato sauce, and I wanted to add a bit more salt, pepper, and sweet paprika to my plate. I grabbed the table versions, which are a nice shaker, but I changed my mind and put them back and used the shakers that we use when cooking. I finished with salt, sweet paprika, and I grabbed the pepper. One moment the shaker is filled halfway and I see it. The moment I have it in my hand, I shake it to pour some on my plate. Nothing falls. I open my fist to see the shaker empty. What the hell? I just blinked and turned around. I wasn't tired or had anything happen to me in my vision. I'm 100% sure the pepper shaker was filled halfway, not empty. How can it be empty? I have experienced glitches in the past, but to this quickly things change? Never. The shaker was made of glass, and it was clean, nothing on the outside that confused me. I asked my parents if the pepper shaker was empty, and they said, yeah, for a month now. They use white pepper instead of black pepper, or they use the mixed peppers for food because the supermarket has a shortage of black pepper since last month. Did I see into the past, or different timeline? Is this considered a glitch? Because I do consider it. Any other theories of what could have happened? Here's my hot take. So, if it's at all humid where you are, whether it be glass or plastic or whatever the medium of your holder is, it can sort of stick to the outside very slightly of the inside, not the outside, but it can stick to the inside. And if it sticks to the inside, it'll look like there's some in there, and then you try to use it, and there's nothing coming out. So it might have looked like it was there. Then, when you tried to shake it, a tiny bit came out. That was stuck to the sides. And then there's nothing in there. You were expecting a bunch to come out, but nothing really came out. That's my guess. My dad and mom's voices. This happened on Sunday the 16th of January 2022. The first event happened at 8 p.m. I was in the wash closet of our house. We have a full bathroom and a wash closet, and I had a coughing fit that sounded really bad. As I've calmed down and I'm trying to catch my breath, I hear my mom's voice coming from the full bathroom, asking me if I'm okay. The bathrooms are connected with a common airway, and we usually use it to speak to one another if it's necessary. Otherwise, it's used as an airway. I say that I'm okay and I get out of the washroom and I go knock on the full bathroom's door to reassure my mom that I'm okay. But nobody was in the bathroom. My mom was in her room and on her computer. Confused, I asked Mom if she'd been in the bathroom the past 5 minutes, and she said she hadn't. She didn't want to lose any moment of her friend's radio program, so she was keeping her water intake at a minimum. I just shook my head, went on with my afternoon. The second event happened at 6 a.m. I was about to head to bed after spending the entire night writing. I'm more creative at night. And I decided that that was enough. Certainly enough writing for tonight. Went to brush my teeth and pee before bed. I'm peeing when somebody knocks on the door. Then I hear my dad's voice asking me if I'm okay. I say, yeah. And he says, all right. Before I hear him enter the kitchen and open the small kitchen light, and I hear him prepare the kettle for his coffee and prepare my sister's breakfast. I look at my phone and it's 6:15 a.m. I think that Dad might have woken up an hour earlier than usual because he couldn't sleep. He usually wakes up at 7 a.m. and starts waking my sister up for school. It wasn't unusual for my dad to wake up at 6 or 5 a.m. or not sleep at all at night, reading comics on his computer waiting for 7. So I shrug it off, get on with my thing. But when I finish and I'm shutting the light, I turn to say good morning to my dad, but the kitchen is empty and dark. Dad is nowhere to be seen. I quickly go to my parents' room and I hear my mom and dad snores, so I go back to my room and just go to sleep. At 7 a.m. I woke up to the sound of my dad's alarm clock. I get up to go ask my dad if he went to the kitchen around 6 a.m. He said nope, but had a dream of getting a glass of water from the kitchen. I'm still confused about those two events. Any idea of what could have happened? Strange encounter in Kanazawa. I'm in Japan with my girlfriend and his brother for a trip. And these days we're in Kanazawa, and today me and her brother saw something really strange. We were changing bus at Omicho Market, and to reach the other bus stop we had to pass through an underpass. It was around 8 p.m. We called the elevator to go upstairs, and it's a transparent elevator, so we can see two boys and a girl coming down. My girlfriend's brother was waiting in the front of the center of the elevator, next to him, to his right, my girlfriend, and then me. The door opens, the boys leave the elevator. So I wait for the girl to get off too. She's not getting off. So I peep to see why she's not getting off. Well, no one was there. So we get on the elevator and get off at the ground floor. Here my girlfriend's brother says something like, "That girl." I asked him if he saw her too, and he said, yeah. Then he knew I saw her too because he saw me searching for her in the elevator after the two boys got off. Both of us saw that she had long hair and she was wearing a light pink-gray coat. I got shivers when we found out that we saw the same non-existing person. I'm having them also now writing about it. It never happened like that. Neither him or me. My girlfriend didn't see anything. Late night encounter with a girl in a white dress. So this happened 2 years ago. I just came back from my vacation trip outside the city. My bus dropped me at the station at approximately 1:30 a.m. I got into the main road and started looking for a cab to go home. There was no cab or any person on site. Standing for 5 to 8 minutes looking at both sides of the road to find a cab. On my left, I saw a girl in a white sari, a traditional dress for women in my country, standing like 50 feet away from me under the lamppost. My heart immediately started pounding. I looked the other way and started praying. A few moments later, I heard her saying, "Hey sir, can you do me a favor?" I was shaking. I turned to her and she was like 4 feet away from me. I immediately took 2 steps back. She smiled and said, "Are you afraid of me?" I said, It's almost 2 a.m. and there's a girl in a white sari standing in front of me at a lone place like this. Yeah, I'm a bit afraid." She chuckled and said, "Don't be. I'm the one afraid, actually. It's really late and I'm alone here. I need to go home. But I want someone to accompany me. Would you please come with me? My home's not far from here. Just to let everybody know, in my country, it's not safe for any woman to be out alone at night. I was scared shitless, but I didn't want to leave a young girl alone there. So I agreed to give her company, but asked her to keep distance." She chuckled and said, "Okay." I really didn't want to talk or make eye contact with her, so I didn't even ask her why she was alone there at this time of the night. I didn't know where we were going. I just followed her. I walked beside her keeping distance. She also didn't say a word the whole time, which was also really eerie to me. After walking for like 15 minutes, she stopped in front of a steel gate which was on her right. She said with a happy face, "My home is a few steps from here. You don't need to take any more trouble. I can take care from here. Thank you for helping me. You're a good person." Then she turned her back and started walking. Thought my job was done. I turned the opposite direction and started walking, but out of curiosity, after taking a few steps, I turned my head to see where she was going. She was gone. There's no girl on sight. I turned back and came in front of the gate and looked around. She was gone. I looked at the gate. It had a padlock on it. There's no way anybody could unlock it, get in, or lock it from the outside in 2 to 3 seconds. It's not possible, at least for a human. But I still didn't know what the gate was for. I looked up and saw a sign over the gate. It says X Cemetery. I realized everything that just happened with me. I started running. I saw a mosque on site and started running toward it. There's always a mosque near a cemetery in my country. I rushed into the mosque, which obviously was noisy. The priest of the mosque woke up and came with a baton, thinking that there was a thief. He saw me laying on the floor unconscious. After a few minutes, I woke up. He asked me what happened. I explained everything. He understood everything and told me the story of the girl. 7 years ago, a girl was raped and killed. People found her body under the lamppost I was talking about earlier. Her face was messed up. No one identified her, so no one came to claim her body. So no complaint was filed at the police, too. The rapist or rapists still roam free to this day. Since no one claimed her body, the locals buried her in the cemetery I said earlier. Since then, a lot of people, especially young guys, have had interactions with her. Some had a hostile experience. Some had peaceful ones. I'd like to think that mine was peaceful. Bad smell in house. My sister recently died from cancer. My family had to adopt my 10-year-old nephew because the father was out of the picture. He plays his PS4 in front room, mostly in his spare time sometimes. And once in a while, I'll go to hang out with him, and I would smell this awful smell. To describe it, it's hard, but it's like the smell of an infection. If you ever take a Band-Aid off an infected wound, it smells like that. It is not a good smell, and the first time I smelt it, I thought milk got spilled everywhere on the carpet. We have a rule for him. He's not allowed to have drinks in there, but kids are kids. So I literally followed my nose around the carpet and couldn't find anywhere on the carpet where the smell was. The smell was very potent, and I'd called another family member into the room to see if they could determine its source. They couldn't even smell it. I asked my nephew before, and he couldn't smell it either. I thought I was having a stroke or going crazy. Later on that day, after my nephew had vacated the room, I went back in and the smell was gone. Periodically over the months, I would smell that smell in the room, and I could never find the source. I even smelled around my nephew to see if it was just him being a stinky kid. No luck. Which he's not. He showers every day. Oh, and before I forget, that was also the room where she used to live up until the day she died. I didn't really think about it all that much until one day my friend and his daughter were over, and we're all downstairs watching television on the big screen. Nephew was also in the room. All of a sudden, I smelled the same smell again, and it was even stronger than before. And let me just add on to this, it's an extremely distinct smell that I would not confuse with another. It was focused around the area my nephew was in, and now I knew the smell wasn't localized to either the upstairs room or coming from my nephew. My brain started spinning into overdrive. Again, no one else could smell it except my nephew, who this time apparently could smell it because he commented on it before I did. This kind of freaks me out because even though I have a limited belief in the paranormal, I can feel in my gut that this smell is from some kind of presence watching over my nephew. It worries me that the smell is not a good smell, and I feel like it may be representative of the state of whatever afterlife my sister is in. She was 9 years older than me and moved out of the house when I was young, so I never really knew her all that well or had a close relationship. I know she had many problems in her life, and she didn't treat my mom very well right up to her death, even though my mom went above and beyond for her. I also just found out my mom has had my sister's ashes upstairs in the closet, so now I'm officially a little bit freaked out. Unrelated, but my grandma also lived in the same room and died from cancer years before, and every once in a while for years after I'd randomly smell her perfume around the house. Again, a very distinct old lady perfume no one else in the house has. I've heard of people being sensitive to spirits and such in different ways, but is smelling spirits a real thing, or am I crazy? I think I can smell my dead sister checking in on her son. I saw a ghost car and found out there was an accident there recently. This happened today, and I'm still in shock. So tonight I did a 2-hour drive to go back home, and it was nighttime. I was getting out of the mountains, which is followed by desert, and not even having an exit for like a whole lot of miles ahead. There's only 2 lanes on this part of the highway. I was driving on the right when all of a sudden I see headlights coming toward me pretty fast. I couldn't see what kind of car it was, but I drive an SUV and these lights were low, so I knew it was a lower car. I look in both mirrors to watch the car. It was just us 2 cars here. Then I physically turn my head to see the car. I see in my blind spot now. I turn my head back to the road where I'm admiring the big bright full moon when all of a sudden the spot where the car's headlights were supposed to be goes pitch black. I look back, didn't see a car. Mind you, there was no exit nearby. We were just getting out of the mountains. There would have been absolutely nowhere for this car to go. I was so confused, and when I look back ahead, I see a big lit up cross on the side of the road. All white lights. I started to get spooked out. I've done this drive 1,000,000 times and never seen that. This was my first time driving at night in a while, since I had a weird occurrence the previous time too. I was speechless. I decided to Google it and realized some people see ghost or phantom cars. One person suggested searching the areas for recent accidents. That's when I find 2 articles from a month ago, on a date that was significant to me. An elderly man died in that area in a singular. He was the only car fatality. Something else that's a crazy coincidence too, he was a resident in the extremely small town that I live in. I'm genuinely so shook up. I wonder if he was showing me what happened moments before he passed away, or warning me. I have no idea, but what I do know is that I was or am of a state of mind that I saw a car disappear into thin air. Pervy Paranormal Pal. Even people who believe in the activities of paranormal entities have a hard time believing this. But I put it on my lovely mother that this is true. So about 6 years ago, I moved my wife and her 3 kids out of their crappy little trailer. They deserved better. So I acquired residence at an old farmhome and moved them in. As the story goes, it was originally built in the early 20s and added onto and remodeled in the 70s. It was a quaint little space. Didn't stay warm in the winter, nor cold in the summer, but it was miles better than what we had before. About 2 weeks in, my wife, which is my girlfriend at that time, told me not to pinch her butt while she was cutting vegetables. I was appalled, sort of, not really, but because it was like I was 5 feet from her at the time. As time goes on, she began to tell me how she constantly felt something pinching her butt when she was in the kitchen. I thought she was just losing her marbles. She didn't work at the time, so I thought it was just cabin fever getting the best of her. Fast forward a bit, and she's got a job at school now. I'm at home alone on Friday and decided to prep some veggies for my meal prep. Not a minute in, and I feel this absolutely ferocious grab on my butt cheek. Not a little pinch, but a total grab and lift. Full cheek. It was as exhilarating as it was terrifying. For 3 years, every time I was cooking, I would feel it. Nothing else ever happened. Nothing unexplainable anyway. Just booty grabbing. It was wild. We moved out a few months ago, and I kind of miss my friend. Precognition as an EMT firefighter. I, a 25-year-old female, work for the fire department that runs ambulances, and I work part-time EMS at 2 stations. I'm fairly new to the field, so I haven't ran any really severe traumas or calls yet. I have had a few code blues and blacks. Today, while we were doing training, I was told to hold the head of a dummy. While they were messing with the dummy and talking, I had this odd thing, like a flashback, and a huge, strong feeling of déjà vu. I had seen myself in the exact position with both hands pressing down on the head of the patient. I had my blue EMS windbreaker on from part-time EMS station and the sleeves tucked into my elbows. There was blood all up my forearms, splattered on my coat and me, and I was holding pressure on a head trauma outside on a scene with snow on the ground. I was heaving and panicked. Tears were rolling down my face. My EMS director was talking to me saying, "Hey, it'll be okay, keep holding pressure." "It's okay, it's almost done. Scott's fiance, who's an officer, will be here soon." Then that little flashback or vision, I suppose, vanished. I was standing in our classroom again. It really bothered me. It felt so real. I was near to tears after. The panic, the inability to catch my breath, the painful cold all around me, and the strong smell of blood. I've never had a call like that. I keep getting these moments of déjà vu at that department, like I've sat in the recliner 100 times or looked down those halls hundreds of times, and I'm only a few months in for a volunteer. I've only worked there a handful of times. Anyway, I've had these moments like that before, where I had déjà vu and it happened. I feel so upset and scared that it'll come true this winter during car crash season. Saw a figure in my garden as a kid. I just really need to get this off my chest. I'm 20 years old right now, and this happened when I was around 7. For some more context, at that age, my family and I would always visit our vacation home during the summer, located in the Netherlands. The house was located in a vacation park with lots of trees around. Our garden specifically had a tree line at the back. Now what I remember, and what my family remembers too, even though my sister's too scared to talk about it. It's that evening when my parents were saying goodbye to our aunts and uncles. I absolutely freaked out. I remember so incredibly well seeing a white figure standing in the back of the garden. It seemed like someone wrapped in white fabric, and only their face was visible. The exposed part was just completely black. It was not a real person because the figure was radiating a white light. It scared me so much that I ran back inside. But even inside my home, I could still see it through the windows. It didn't move or speak, it just stood still. Till this day, I can't have the curtains open when we're in that part of the Netherlands. I know most people would shove this off onto a child's imagination, but why the hell did I keep seeing it even after minutes of moving from my spot? My family believes from how scared I was, my older sister gets angry whenever I mention it due to her fear. The cats are hissing and growling at our possible entity in our home. So my previous post a while ago had some spooky things going on in our home. We've kind of never had much of a reaction with the cats. But that started to change. Now my cats have always been super chill, except for the occasional growl at strangers at the door. Very rare for them to do. Like if they hear somebody at the door, they'll growl. It's cute, but it hasn't happened in a long while. But in the last week, we've had 2 incidents with unexplained hissing. My Arya, she's the only female cat of 4, was part of the first incident. It was nighttime, pretty late. Husband was sleeping next to me, kind of a night owl. Now her usual spot is next to our bed on the swivel chair. It's for the desk. I reach over and pet her from where I'm sleeping. So I look over her and she's standing up straight, just staring at her door that's open to the hallway. I ask her what she's staring at. She fucking growls. I'm like, what the fuck? She keeps staring and growling as I pet her. There's nothing there, by the way. Nobody outside, no other cats. I look. I go in the hallway. Nothing. She isn't old either. She's only about 6 or 7 in cat years. So, no senile there. She does eventually calm down, but it was spooky. Now remember, I said my stairs are kind of haunted. Well, that's where the second incident happened. That was today, too. My husband saw this one. He said our cat son, Tyrion, ran from the landing up the stairs, turned around and hissed at the empty space. This cat is the chillest, like my toddler sometimes pulls his tail. I've been very diligent about them being gentle with my cats. And he'll just meow at them and they lay back down and usually rub against them. He's just that cool of a cat. He doesn't hiss. I don't think in the 6 or 7 years I've had him that he's ever hissed. Except when I take him to the vet. He loathes the vet. So now I'm wondering if this is a bad entity that had stopped by. Also, they never lay on the landing, just usually the second part of the stairs. So I wonder if my cat pissed something off by sitting on the landing. Should be noted, I haven't paid much attention or showed any fear with the entities that may be here, since the incident anyway. I feel if something is here, it's coming and going. Perhaps some kind of portal near my house, or on it. Haven't seen anything, haven't felt much of a presence, but who knows? Probably blocking things to protect my mind. My daughter occasionally talks about the scary monster, but it can be anything for her. Sometimes it's a bug, sometimes it's something outside, or when it's dark. So to pinpoint anything has been hard since she's a toddler. A hand in the cabinet in my kitchen that scared my husband. My house is haunted for sure, but it's the type of haunted that isn't consistent. Personal opinion. My house is near a portal or on one, and they come and go, never really staying. I've had instances of children's laughter, shadows, cold spots that move, hissing cats at doorways, one spooked cat on the stairway, creaking stairs when no one's on them. Lights not working in the bathroom at night, faces the stairs, but then work the next day, and just overall feeling something's watching me from the stairs when I'm sitting on the toilet, and sometimes when I lay in the bed. Most things happen on the stairs or in our closet. The closet is flush to the stairs. They share a wall. And once in a while, the kitchen is super rare. Well, last night was a kitchen nightmare. I had just left the kitchen after making tea, getting the kids some Kool-Aid. I sat down and my husband was starting to make dinner. He was making deer meat spaghetti. I hate the taste of deer meat, so he's kind of trying to hide the gamey flavor with spices so it just tastes like normal beef. I don't know how he does it, but it impresses me. He reaches underneath one of the cabinets and lets out a yell into what the fuck. He scurried out of the kitchen like backing away. Now this guy isn't scared of anything. Like I remember freaking out with the kids' laughter and he hardly budged. He told me to ignore it. That's what he usually does with this paranormal stuff. Kinda used to it, he says. Until he saw the hand. He said he was reaching down to get a pan, and a frickin' ghost hand zoomed past the cabinet. It's one of those deep-pocketed ones at the bottom that holds a bunch of pans. Our son likes to get in it sometimes, he's 2, and he can easily shut the door and have tons of room, so whatever the hand was disappeared in the wall cabinet. This kitchen is flush to our neighbors, it's a townhome. He was freaking out. He kept yelling, "I saw a hand, I saw a hand, I saw a hand." I don't think he's even seen a ghost. Maybe heard them, smelled them. Some ghosts have sense, by the way. Or felt them, but seen them? I don't think so. He still went back in to make dinner after he calmed down for a second. I'll admit, I was pretty uncaring, and I said, "Oh, a hand? Fun." I think I've just learned to ignore. They usually don't bother you. They do feed off fear, I think, or deep emotions. But I do feel a little paranoid at times.